Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production of all kinds, and our second hour on Saturdays is general discussion about media of all kinds. We go until we just run out of questions. So we, it could be an hour long, 45 minutes long, an hour and a half long. We do request that you don't try to ask lots and lots of questions. Just keep it to 3 or 4 for the day, and then we'll just, if we get through them, we get through them. So we've got a bunch of questions coming in. One thing to note is that you can ask questions anytime now. In fact, about half of the questions we have today are coming in from our new little QR code. And so you can basically, if you see this QR code, that's not the right one. Hold on, let me turn that off. I reset my thing. Now you can see something else that has nothing. It's not like it's secret. You can go see it. It's our test, my test front end. So you'll see Acme. You can ask questions there if you want. Let's see here. This is what I was supposed to show you here. I had to reset my switcher. One thing that's interesting is I get the gray screen every morning. So I'm going to have to stop using UVC from my switcher, I think, to Zoom. It doesn't do it anywhere else, but Zoom and ATEMs are not getting along. So if you use this is the askofficehours.com. And you can use that any time of the day. So, and then what we do is we get up in the morning, we just import them into Makana, and then people can still vote on them. So if it's still better, if you log into Makana, you can chat with each other and you can vote on things and you can do all those things there. So there's still a value to being in Makana. But if you just want to ask a quick question and you're watching on YouTube right now, and that right now can be anytime when you're seeing this video, you can select this and ask your questions. And that's starting, more and more people are starting to use it. And it's interesting, we're seeing new people, which is great, asking a lot of great questions. So feel free to use that, and we'll leave that up for a little while for you to see it. Let's go ahead and jump into the first question. Robert?
Thanks, Alex. From Thomas Tomchak, Chicago, Illinois. How do people typically learn to be a technical director on live shows? I act as a TD sometimes on a Tricaster Elite, but it can be weeks or months in between jobs. Every time I'm doing a show again, I feel like I'm starting over.
Go ahead, Laura.
Well, one way would be, it's not a Tricaster, but go to the office hours email and get into the crew here and get some practice that way.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
There's 2 levels of things, Thomas, that you have to learn. You have to learn how a show flows and how a crew works together. And you'll get some of that, like Laura said, by working on this show. But there's really no substitution for sitting behind a switcher and, getting comfortable with your hands and, getting that muscle memory, which we were talking about right before the show. There is no class that you can take, no degree that you can get, no certification that you can obtain that will allow you to walk into like a big sports truck and sit down and punch a NBA game just right from the get-go where nobody knows you. It will never happen. That doesn't happen. You have to build yourself up through the ranks. And what it usually means is you need to find something where you are sitting there day in and day out, probably working on stuff you don't really want to work on. But you got to get the hours in. You got to understand what it's like to sit in a chair through all 9 innings of period of time. As an editor, I've lost any ability to concentrate when I can concentrate, but hey, I have to go to the bathroom, or I'm thirsty. I'm going to stand up and go get a drink. You don't do that in the middle of a baseball game. And there's a lot of things to learn that you have to get super comfortable with, because you're in a position where the whole show can come crumbling down. I have a great story I'll tell sometime in after hours, where a whole show comes tumbling down, and they don't let just anybody sit there. You have to prove yourself. You have to, in the sports world, you start on doing like Jumbotron on high school games or college games, and then you work up eventually. You can sit in a truck doing a major league game. But you're right. It is like starting over, and you have to put in the hours. So if you think you want to work at this level, you might have to work on things like this. Do the time, get the experience, meet everybody around you.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Chris is right there about the muscle memory. You have to get familiar with the hardware, depending upon what switcher you're going to be working with. You got to spend a lot of time on that switcher, know where all the ME buses are and which ones cascade into which ones. And we used to have situations when I started in television with Grass Valley switchers that you could get into a fairly difficult, situation with split screen between two people and a lower third over the bottom. And it's the end of the show and you want to fade to black and there's no one button that'll get you out of that. There was no fade to black button on the program bus. So you had to double punch so that the image wouldn't change to get you back onto the bus where you could fade to black on the program bus. But it was, so it's tricky. It depends on the specific switcher. And I know the Tricaster, the problem is you can save settings. And if you go into it and somebody has it set up for the way that they like to switch and they've saved that profile and you go in there and their profile is up, save your own profile once you've worked with it so that on that switcher, you can come back to it and where all the buttons are and what cameras, et cetera, are punched into which inputs and so on. So you have to get familiar enough to be able to switch almost blindfolded. And be able to listen to the director because the director has a certain pacing to him. And, he'll say, ready, 2. And, you got to be very fast to be ready on 2 and know where that 2 button is without looking down to take it on his command. So get used to the director and watch over the shoulder with somebody else TDing for that specific director to learn his pacing. That's a good suggestion, too.
Good, Chris.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is I did all the sports stuff that I did like 30 plus years ago. And I'm really glad I did it. I think it's really a great experience to do it. And I would never do it again.
There's so many things like that.
I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad. Yeah. I'll admit it's the most, impressive thing that I can refer to in my career. Most of the stuff I've done is just ridiculous. But I don't think I could do it these days. It's so much different. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is it's just some of it is just hours, just lots and lots and lots of hours of doing something. There was a decade for me that was a grind. It was 100 hours a week, typically 80 to 100 hours a week for a decade. I traveled 250,000 miles a year. I was on some show somewhere. I'd wake up and I didn't know what continent I was on, and all I was managing was high profile live streams for a decade. But the key is that I had to get it done. It doesn't matter whether you like to do this or not, or whether it's a good idea or not. It doesn't matter whether it was structured correctly or not. You just get better at it, and you get better at figuring it out. But also, I was working with many, many, many different teams. So every day it was a new team, different creative team, different design team, different broadcast team. So there's a thing you learn by just doing a lot of it, and then there's something you get by learning with a lot of other people. So I would take, these people are crazy when they do that, but this is really interesting. I really like what they did there. And I would do that 3 to 5 times a week. I'm just constantly in this zone. And it was like I would never want to, I won't do it again. Like I've been a little bit more like I won't try. Like some people don't do dishes, and I'm very much like it's very hard to get me to leave and get on a plane because I'm so not wanting to do that again. And I feel like I missed a big chunk of time with my family and all those other things. But my skill set is really high, and I'm able to figure out a lot of things in real time because of all of that time. And the problem is that it's not something that you can, I'm going to do some research on the internet and try to figure it out or anything else. It's like muscle, like low end. Like I could hear, there was an event I was working on. I could hear a little tick, 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 like this. It's super subtle. And I'm like, hey, I can hear this ticking. And I know that that's a mismatch between the encoder and the decoder. And because I've heard it before for months, like we worked on it, like we could hear it. And so the thing is these are streaming specialists on the other side going, I don't hear it. And I'm like, it's there. And they said, well, nothing's being added. I don't see it in the levels. I was like, no, it's the absence of something. It's not the enter. It's you're losing bits along that stream. And it was just me outlining something that I had heard before, but you would never, if you had never heard a mismatch between the encoder and decoder before, you wouldn't even hear it happening, and that's the kind of stuff that happens when you do thousands of events, and you're the one that had to figure those out. So I agree with Chris that it's just, so much of it is just getting things down to muscle memory. And I know Chris and I like to agree once a year just to make sure that we create continuity, in that process. But the best thing to do, what I would say is that, this is also why Blackmagic took so much of the ground, is because you can get a relatively inexpensive switcher, an ATEM, a little ATEM Mini, and that interface changes very little from the ATEM Mini to the 4ME. It's just, or the Constellation, there's only minor changes to it. So, and that is why Blackmagic just really owns a huge chunk of the market, and it's a lot less expensive than Tricaster. So it becomes that. So that becomes a, I can get into it for $300 or for $1,000 or $4,000. I mean, even a $10,000 Constellation, which has an incredible amount of 8K or 4K IO, is $10,000, not $40,000 like the Tricaster, or $20,000, like those things. And again, you have the hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people that bought the minis are all now understand an interface, so as Blackmagic, I think, continues to upgrade their switching hardware, I think they just have this huge thing. And what we want to do, and we've done it as tests and we haven't really been able to rebuild it, but is to take shows that we do. What we want to do is do test shows, and then just have them constantly looping, like we did with the 12 people looping for Zoom ISO. And you just have 4. And then if you have Zoom ISO, you could just grab onto those and start cutting, like just cutting, adding graphics.
That'd be cool.
And we want to record the TD, that we want to record the director so that you can listen to a director and just cut to it. That's the best way to learn. I mean, that'd be the best way for you to get used to it, is to just do the things that they're asking for. One thing I will say is that I know that NEP and the Thursday Night Football folks and all the other folks always talk about the fact that they can't find enough people. If you're willing to intern and be on a truck and not make much, make minimum wage, there's a lot of people that will let you jump on that truck because they're looking for people who are interested in doing those things, because they just can't find enough of them. Their labor is a huge shortage. So if you go to a company like NEP. NEP is based outside of Pittsburgh, I think. But if you call them and say, I'm interested in doing it, they'd probably put you on a truck tomorrow. You just have to know that you're not going to make any money. Like the big thing about broadcast is you don't really make any money for the first 10 years. It's like, you're just grinding through. I mean, it's different than film. It's only 2 years. You can PA and you start making some money, but in broadcast, it's like 10 years of pulling cables and running things. But that's how you know how to do what you're doing, and you saw like Brad came on, and Brad was, he's the TD for Thursday Night Football. And his father was doing trucks, so he grew up in it, and he understood it as he started to work through it. But he also worked on a lot of low level stuff before he got to work on what he's working on now, which is probably the highest level of live that you can do right now. And so I think that, but that takes a long time. So you're competing with kids that are 18 years old that can do that don't have families, that don't have house payments, that don't have all those other things. So you kind of have to think about, that's the hard part when you get older, is you got a bunch of overhead, And so if you can reduce that overhead, the other thing that there was a guy that I was shooting a movie. We were shooting a short film for a friend, and this guy came with the nicest techno crane that I'd ever seen. It was big and red. It was red. I don't know why you have a red techno crane. Anyway. And he said, well, I said, would you come out of Hollywood? And because this is in Minneapolis. And he's like, no, he goes, I just figured if I bought this, then people would bring me on set and I could learn how to do it. And I was like, what did you do before? He goes, oh, I had a problem with snoring. So I built this little strip that goes over your nose. he goes, I made some money. so anyway, so he's really into film, and he just wanted to learn. But that's the key. Is I will tell you, there are a lot of people that I know that just get gear and get things and are willing to spend free time, low paid work. That's how you get in. Like, the free is the straw that drank 1,000 milkshakes, and being able to provide that and get in, that's how a lot of people wedge their way into this if they don't have a traditional method. So you just got to be ready that it's not going to pay well. It may not pay at all. It may require a lot of stuff. But if you really are committed to getting into that, that's the fastest way actually to wedge your way into the system. Go ahead, Laura.
To your point, Alex, being this crew is an amazing group of people. And I have learned so much over the last 2.5 years watching and listening and just kind of figuring out where I fit, and it's all volunteer. We're an all volunteer crew. And it's just, It's
Well, it's the big thing here is that this, we have figured out how to seamlessly build. I mean, I felt like yesterday was near peak office hours. We had 6 panelists from 4 countries, and when not like 4 countries that were next to each other. I mean, 2 of them were. You have Canada and the U.S., Germany, Singapore. I think there might have been one more. In Italy. So we had all these countries that were there. We were seamlessly taking. We had more questions than we knew what to do with. We had these incredible experts talking about it. We had this incredible crew on the back end cutting that together. And that is I think this week overall, when we talked about it a little bit before the show, it's kind of peak office hours, like between the different interviews and the different people that we brought in and, and everything else. The goal is to get to that every week. That's what it looks like. But what it takes, if you look at the opportunities that we had with, having Stu and having, Robert Scoville and having the Plates Pro, I thought was a great, the great management one that was built by the team on Monday, the NDI discussion on Friday. That doesn't get done without a big team willing to do it. It's not like I can do that. Get those people to just show up and have an hour chat. And so the team really makes this, all the teams, the management teams and the production teams and everything else. But in addition to that, we figured out how to relatively seamlessly build a show that is run by a global team. And I think that's going to become more and more valuable as we move forward. Next question.
From Alexander Knight, Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, looking for recommendations on a robust WordPress theme that works well for podcasts. Need something that can display an audio or video player automatically based on an embedded link.
Go ahead, John.
So I've built hundreds of WordPress sites over the years, and there's not one specific to podcasts that's sticking out. I would check with Ken to see what he's using, because we've got all of our stuff on office hours on that theme, and that's WordPress. I use Avada, which is a great theme. I've got podcast sites built on Avada. The other big one out there is Divi. Those two are probably the leading WordPress themes, but check with Ken too.
I'll go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, I agree with John. There's probably not a specific one, but I also look at plugins because you can embed the streams with plugins, regardless of what theme you use. I used one called Nisarge, I believe it's called, and I've used a plugin that's called YouTube Embed Plus to embed YouTube playlists directly to the site, and then you can just add it to the playlist and it will appear on the site.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, on the embedded area, YouTube is very, very comprehensive in terms of the embedded data that you can put. You can tell where it's going to start, whether it's going to autoplay. There's so many things you can do with it. I guess it's JavaScript based, but I just know that if you're going to do any type of website, YouTube is a good place to do your program from.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, would an Aputure MC Pro be a solid desktop lighting solution for the home office, or would a Pavotube be a better choice? And a link is provided to aputure.com.
Good, Courtney.
I don't like either one of those choices. The Aputure they make fine lights. The one that you pointed to, though, was really designed for camera, mounting on top of a camera when you're hand holding something that's portable that you can carry around with you. It's pocketed, small size. And the thing I don't like about these is the discrete LEDs. You have to put some diffusion on them, otherwise they're a little too harsh and it's a little too small an area. I prefer going to something like the Neewar. This particular one, the GL25B, is about a 13-incher. It's an edge lit panel, so you don't see any discrete LEDs, so it's diffuse. It's about 13 inches, has a desk clamp on there to mount it on your rig at home for home or office. And it looks more like it lights you up like a nice soft window light in front of you rather than a kind of a harsh local light that can cause multiple shadows from those discrete LEDs. And it is quite a bit cheaper than the Aputure. I think they're around $89, I think, for the one that I showed. It's bicolor, so it can change color temperatures. And then if you wear glasses, Also, if it's reflected in your glasses, it looks more like a window and not like an actual multi-point light of all the old LEDs, which is really annoying to see reflected in glasses.
Yeah, and you can also build larger ones. Like mine, again, I've talked about passes 3 feet by 5 feet with lights behind it. And you put newer lights back there or whatever you want. You can buy CFLs or whatever you want to do, LEDs. So there's a lot of things you can do back there. It's going to create a nice big soft light for you. So think about that as well. I think I agree with Courtney that the Aputure light is probably a little too small it'll be very sourcey. So I probably wouldn't want to go down that path. Next question.
From Mitchell Hill, Wilmington, Delaware, and here on the panel, Alex, can you tell us some IML stories? Robin Williams at the library would be a good start.
Not on air. So if you ask me something like that on a Sunday, or if I talk about it before the show, a lot of times if I come on before the show, I'll tell funny stories about, funny travel stories. But anyway, I think we were talking before the show that Robin Williams is really funny. Next question.
From Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, how would you set up 4 iPhone 14 Pro Maxes using NDI as cameras? How would you connect them to a 4250 router with an Ethernet dongle of some kind? Netgear 4250-8G2XF-POE plus.
If you wanted to, you can basically, I would wait until next week to see what happens with Apple or not next week, but the week after. Most likely you're going to have USB-C iPhones coming out, and those are going to be a lot easier to connect to everything than what's happening right now. Right now, what you would do is take a Lightning connection. It would be Lightning to 2 Lightnings, and then out of one of those Lightnings is Lightning to USB and Lightning. Then it's USB to Ethernet, and then you tie those Ethernets into your hub, and you power each one of them, and it would be a huge mess, and I would never do it. But that's how if you're asking how, that's how you would do it. If you're asking would, no, not would. Go ahead, Courtney.
Does anyone make a Lightning to Ethernet connection that will take PoE, power over Ethernet, and charge over the Lightning port for the iPhone to keep it powered up the entire time? That would be really cool, because just one dongle, then you wouldn't have to mess with the double switch dongle, to keep it running.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I just haven't tried.
There's an opportunity for you inventors out there,
and it's going to be a grand
Lightning. It's going to be because that's going to
grand. It's going to be a grand opportunity for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. Next question.
From Ned DeVivic, St. Louis, Missouri, how do you remote control PowerPoint from an iPad, phone, or tablet when the PPT is on a PC?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, there's this program called Internet Clicker that you can use. It's a web service, but if you want to do a little bit more DIY solution, you can set up a companion and Vicro a listener, something like that, and open companion interface on the iPad.
Yep, that's exactly the way I would do it. Next question.
From Jonathan Brownlee, Vacaville, California. What happened to Beyoncé this week? How do you fix it or avoid it? Incidentally, she is appearing here at SoFi Stadium this weekend.
Hopefully it won't happen again at SoFi. This was in Arizona. The problem that happened was they lost audio, not power, but audio for 10 minutes. So the concert went out. Literally the audio dropped out for 10 minutes, and I'm sure there's a lot of meetings. Like that's one of those ones that generates them. Just so you know, that's a what we call a molecular changing event for people when that kind of thing happens in front of that many people. It's not going to be minor. Someone is going to hang on to their job by their fingernails or not. So that's a huge issue. A lot of ways that this can happen. Generally, I would say for 10 minutes. It sounds like some kind of power or something else went out. But there's many places that it can happen. We've seen issues in concerts with clocking, and so clocking is the number one thing that gets us in a concert environment. You have a lot of things being built up, and someone decided to add something else to it, and it's sitting on side of Dante or Maddie or whatever, and that clocking doesn't match up, and then everything is based on that clocking. So when it goes sideways, a lot of bad things happen, and so that's the thing that we've seen the most common. But 10 minutes is a very long time for something to go down. But I have seen shows that were delayed by at least 10 minutes because of the clocking errors, but usually it happened before the show, not during the show. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, their power problems are a big gotcha. And sometimes if they don't do the sound check at full volume, I've been in events where they didn't check the sound system at full volume. And when you fill the stadium full of people or the event location full of people, it takes a lot more power to drive to the same volume. And at one concert, they just blew the transformer, the power transformer for the stage that all the audio amplifiers were plugged into, because the drummer hit one huge downbeat and the signal was turned up so high, it just instantly blew the transformer.
Yeah.
So it can happen. You have to rehearse and make sure that you have enough power, another 40 to 50% power handling capability above the maximum power that you can consume.
Yeah, I mean, as with everything else we've said, you design your systems to be around 40% capacity. So the system has to have 60% of headroom, because then when they start adding things or going, oh, we'll do one more thing or whatever, you don't want to go over 60% capacity. You want to have that headroom all the time. And if you start seeing it, get above 60% capacity of any system, that means your CPU or your power or anything, or even your crew, you should start to think about your life choices and thinking about how this works, because usually that's what creates a cascading event. And a cascading event is what creates what we saw at the Beyoncé, most likely what we saw there. Next question.
From Laura Thompson, Beaumont, Texas, and here on the panel, is there a way to use documents created in MS Office in Apple software?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Sure. It'll load pages, I think, will load doc files or docx files. So that should work fine. And you want to export them. If you need to share them with someone else, you need to export them out in the same format. But you should be able to go back and forth between the Apple custom software and Microsoft Word, which does exist on Apple as well. So you could use that. And there's a number of open source programs that are compatible with Microsoft Office that are free. You could download and use those.
I agree with Courtney that you can import the docx, but as someone who doesn't have Microsoft Office on my computer, I will tell you that it doesn't import them necessarily well. So if you do anything special in PowerPoint or Word, when it comes into Pages or Keynote or going from Excel to things, a lot of things can break on the way in. So it's not necessarily a smooth transition. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree to what's being said here. With my Apple, it never met a MS document it didn't like, so I've done pretty well with it.
Yeah, good, Laura.
Maybe I'm lucky.
The only issue, I just realized that why this isn't working for me is because they are shared documents on OneDrive, and I'm trying to keep them updating in real time.
No, you have to use Word for that.
That's that. I just realized it's not a matter of I can download them, import them.
Right.
But like I'm dealing with live documents that there are multiple people trying to edit at the same time, and Numbers just doesn't want them.
When we get live documents, we move them into Google so fast that it's like it's not like, I know that there's people who use Microsoft, but we just use Google Docs for all of those things.
The university won't let me use a Google Doc.
Yeah,
I've begged. We're a Microsoft campus, and I just find that when I have Excel and Word and Outlook and Teams open, and I'm trying to do anything else, it just even an M1 Mac Pro, even the MacBook Pro M1 I'm finally choking it.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it. Anyway, next question.
From Jeff Bernstein in Easton, Maryland. I noticed the Netgear 42 switches the NDI guys mentioned yesterday in our second hour has NDI 5 with Dante. I heard that Dante and NDI do not play nice on the same VLAN. Did this change? Do they now play nice together?
They play nice together when you use a 4250. So these routers, these Netgear routers, are designed to support Dante and NDI within the same router. So do they play nicely? Not naturally. Will they play nicely if managed properly? Yes. And how do you do that? The easiest way is using Netgear's tools that are designed to make that actually work, or switches. Next question.
From Corlin McCorkle in Bournemouth, Leeds, England. I've heard about different wiring to get better sound and video? What is an isolated ground mesh network, and how do you build it to have perfectly clean signals?
So I don't know the answer to the ground mesh network answer, but I can say that generally clean signals are generated by using the same circuit. When you have two circuits, the problem is that you have electrons that want to go to ground, and you're giving them a different opportunity to get to ground, and they're using your audio cables to get there. Electricity is, there's a whole second hour there somewhere of us talking about electrical. I've studied it a bit because my father works with what's called stray voltage, which is something that is a legal problem for a lot of electric companies. That electricity always wants to go home. It's so it is, and it goes home through anything it can find. And what's happening when you have your equipment plugged into two different circuits is it's using the wrong one to get home, and you can hear it on the audio channels. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the solution is just to route all of your electrical from a single point, if it's at all possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but like, for example, when I was running teleprompters, we'd have problems with ground loops showing up on CRTs as rolling bars. And so in every situation, I would have one place that I would plug in that would be a grounded outlet, and I would send video and AC to every device that I'm going to be using. All of those AC cables were plugged into the common ground, distributed from the single point that I am plugged into. So you don't have multiple paths to ground. If you do have multiple paths to ground, it's a source, like Alex said, for hum to sneak in, because the ground differential will carry a voltage, and that'll show up as hum in your audio. So have grounded cables. Make sure you distribute audio to all of your peripheral equipment from one point, and you should not have a grounding problem.
And, we have had, in some cases, extreme cases of this, we've actually come with we've had, for certain components that aren't high voltage but are sensitive to it, we put them on battery. And even we've even had, because the battery doesn't need that. So that's that's another way to kind of handle it. I know one audio company that I worked with that, short of amplification, which was given a ground, everything they did was on battery, which I thought was crazy. But anyway, but they did nothing. They could run 12 hours on a battery charge, and for a 3-hour event or whatever. And that's how they ran all of their core equipment, to make that happen. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one other way to avoid, if it's unavoidable, use fiber connections between 2 points, and that will not carry the ground loop with it. So it's kind of like operating wireless. Yeah. Use a wireless link to get rid of your ground loops, or optical fiber.
Next question.
From Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What kind of featureful KVM would you use that would be consistent with a bunch of MeLE or Beelink type mini computers?
Go ahead, Samuel.
I use a Synergy from Seamless. It's a software KVM, and that's worked very well for my needs. I've connected 4 computers together and used one keyboard and mouse, and I just move over to the next one. It works very well for me, at least.
Yeah, and I have, I just have some pretty simple KVMs. This is the one that I'm using right now. I just moved up to 8 of these, and it's a who makes it? T-Tech. T-Tech, T-E-T-E-K, and it works fine. It's 8 channels, and it has RS-232 as well. So I'm planning to put some stuff in there so that I can talk to it remotely, rather than having to push the little buttons. So, and it was like $80, not very expensive. You can get more expensive ones, obviously, but those are now I'm not going to get it right. But there's a company that really makes the high end ones, but for $80, this one's worked pretty well. Next question.
From Mitchell Hill, Wilmington, Delaware. Have you seen the new Bose Model 3 Tesla exhaust speaker? Not sure this is a real product, but it's real funny. And there is a link to ifunny.co.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it's a real product because it's on iFunny. And what it is, it's a pair of speaker tailpipes for your Model 3 so that you can... pedestrians will hear you coming, and you can program it with the sounds of like the Jetsons car, or a Honda Civic with cutout muffler and so on. So there are a lot of car pedestrian accidents are up a huge amount since electric cars came around. And well, that and people that are looking at their phone as they're walking across the street and driving their cars. But other than that, this would definitely give you a warning that comes in. It's a good promo for Bose too.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
It takes me back to my bicycle, and I had the Mattel Vroom installed on my bike, and anybody can remember that was this thing you could crank it, and it would make the sound of a vroom. So I agree with the stealth issues of some of the cars out there right now. Can't tell when they sneak up on you.
Next question.
From Joe Phillips, Murphy, North Carolina. With the iPhone 15 rumors of 2 gigabytes USB-C and enhanced optics, is it an entry-level alternative to traditional camera rig?
Go ahead, John.
The answer is yes. Every time I take out my Ursa 12 case and my iPhone, I end up using more footage on my iPhone than I do my Ursas. And I'm upgrading to the 15, so I'll let you know how that works out.
Next question.
From John Preto, Las Vegas, Nevada, and here on the panel, Google announced yesterday that they are dropping support of the drop cam for their ongoing Nest service in April of 2024. Thoughts?
Go ahead, John.
Dropping. Did you get that one?
Yeah.
So if you bought the original cameras, which were drop cams before Google acquired them, the drop cam or the drop cam Pro, no bueno after April of next year. And these cameras are hundreds of dollars, and I've got 11 of them installed. So I'm going through my list now and see how many I'm going to have to upgrade. It's no bueno.
I don't know why I don't know why they don't let them just keep working. Like it's, and it's, and I think that I know that I've got a bunch of Nest cams, and I've got, like you, probably 8 or 10 drop cams that I have. And, when you see that they're all going to be end of life, you're just like, really? I'm still angry about the Sonos thing with the amps. I've got 14 amps that were bricked, by Sonos, and I won't buy any more of their products. Like that's the problem is like there was no good reason for them to do that. Like they were working perfectly well, and they bricked them. And now I as far as I'm concerned, that brand is dead to me, and that's the, and so that's the real problem is that, I look at that and I go, well, I probably shouldn't have bought all those Nests, like eventually, those will get bricked as well. So I just think that end of lifing things, just randomly saying we're going to not support these anymore, rather than allowing them to just, like Apple lets you limp along with whatever. I mean, we have people who I have computers that are over 10 years old that you just, you use them for something, but it's not like Apple bricked them, and so that's the thing that's a kind of a pain. Next question.
From Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, Meta may allow Instagram and Facebook users in Europe to pay to avoid ads in response to European Union's policies and court rulings to restrict Meta's data collection practices. Discuss.
I haven't been really tracking it, so I don't know. I don't know if I don't. Yeah, sure. Next question.
From Jason Robert Shaw, Sarasota, Florida. Recommend affordable portable assistive learning devices for museum walking tours and lectures to some 10 people. Is there an app for that? Unity seems too complex.
Well, I mean, we've talked to people about it, and it's just been a matter of building the platform that would allow us to do it. My whole thing is that I don't really, I won't use if you go to a museum, there's little things you can put up against your ear, and then you listen to it and everything else, and you go to each thing. And in addition to feeling very old, I won't use shared stuff. I'm not gonna put that up against my ear. I'm not gonna put those little headphones on. That's weird and gross as far as I'm concerned. And so that's the big problem. I just want my iPhone to work. Like I just want it to, and I don't actually. The other thing is that I don't really want to go with a group of people. So I don't want to go as a group. I want to go to every item, and where things get really interesting there, and what we've been a lot of us have been thinking about is, and I'm kind of curious because it doesn't seem like it's picking up as fast as I thought it would. And that's often the case. Is ultra wideband allows us to identify where a phone is within about 6 to 10 centimeters. And so it's a very small little ball that we know where someone is. And if you use a little bit of object tracking, you can tell exactly where they are, like to the millimeter. And I would rather, what I want to be able to do is go to the King Tut, let's say exhibit or whatever, and be able to walk up to something and pick up my phone and have AR and have it show me things and talk to me, or just talk to me as I walk around. But I want an individual experience. I don't really want a group experience, to be honest. Like, it's not something I'm interested in as a user. Maybe if you were going to give me a tour virtually, I'd love to have a big group and we all ask questions and everything else. But I don't usually really enjoy a large group of people, or even 10. It's just too many people if you don't have the tools to manage it well. Go ahead, Courtney.
Another alternative, I recommended this to a couple of people that were doing museum exhibits. There's something called Holosonics Audio Spotlight. And it's a highly directional audio spotlight transducer that you put above each exhibit. And you can only hear that exhibit if you're standing in a specific area in front of that exhibit. You don't hear it broadcasting throughout the rest of the area. It doesn't require anyone to have a device or load anything onto their phone. And these days, with privacy concerns, that's a big issue about loading a special app on your phone to just monitor in a museum. People don't want to do that because they think you're tracking them after you leave the museum, et cetera.
Right.
But something like this, it's fairly expensive though to install that in front of each exhibit, but then the people could hear what's going on at each exhibit without it interfering with everybody at the next exhibit.
Yeah. I've worked with a couple of those types of speaker systems, and they do work very well. Actually, they're very, very directional. You can't hear them until you're standing right under it, but then you have to wait for people to stand right under it. So I just don't. I have to, and I admit I'm probably on the outer edge of not really like to interact with other people, and I don't like to interact with strangers in public. Like, it's just like it's not my happy space. So it keeps me out of a lot of these things, because I just don't want to. Like, I just want to go and just wander around and get the information that I want as I go. I think that you could have a group of people, if you have a person who really knows what they're talking about. There is some advantage to doing it as a group, but I think I'd rather do that virtually than to be in the same space. So it's kind of an interesting puzzle. Next question.
From Sally DeMarcus, Detroit, Michigan. I keep getting stuck in meetings with lots of bad video sharing and audio. What's up with that?
Well, I mean, I think that the best thing to do is to invest in your own system. Use shame to push people, to nudge people forward over time. So you don't have to say anything about it. You just be there. And the thing is it pushes people up against realizing that their system isn't very good. And so but I think that people, especially if you're working from home, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. You really need to upgrade your system. It's part of why people think that you're not really part of it. And you can very easily, build something that is much more robust. You will look better than everyone else, including the people that are at the office. And it's not hard to do that. And if you're working from home and you want to keep working from home, it's a pretty important thing to think about. Next question.
From David Brady, New York, New York. So I got a new phone and restored profile from backup. The OH Radio app is in a suspended state, but when defrosting throws an error to reinstall, redirects to the App Store and dead ends. How can I get it back?
I don't know. I think I would uninstall Test Flight and then reinstall it. The other thing I will tell you is that I never restore phones. I never restore anything ever. My phone, I just got a new computer. We were talking about this. It's like I never copy from an old device to a new device, ever. It brings old things with it. It creates little errata. Especially with the iPhone, there's so little that's saved in it. It's almost all cloud. What I do is I don't want all the same app. I go in and I install the apps as I use them. If I kept all the apps on the phone that have ever been on my phone, I'd have pages, extra pages of stuff. It's bad enough, but I add them as I'm interested in them. And I just download them from the cloud again. So that's I would highly recommend doing that. I mean, what I would probably do is, again, if you got a new phone right now, the new phone's released next week. I'm just saying. Go ahead, Laura.
I absolutely second your never reinstalling from a backup. I know from the struggles I've had diagnosing assistive technology, and from some very high level assistive technology people, that even cloning exact same hardware and cloning an operating system can give you different results. So you want to start clean with everything.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, if you're using a layer 2 VPN like ZeroTier, what is the most effective way to transport NDI across the internet? And a ZeroTier.com link is there.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, NDI isn't really designed to go over the internet, but there's this app called NDI Bridge. It's like a gateway you put on each side, and then you can effectively transport the NDI signals and also the control, PTC control, and other data over the NDI bridge.
Next question.
From Jacques Lomontreau, New Orleans, Louisiana. What's the best speaker and amp setup with balanced wiring for playing guitar and bass on stage?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Jacques, one of the cool systems out there, and they kind of invented the category, is the Bose L1 Pro series. They have these large speaker arrays that are stacked, and they can break down nicely into a roll-around case. So it's good if you're doing portable events and things like that. And also, they've got a bunch of different versions of it that you can build on to improve the mixing capability, all the types of inputs, EQ, et cetera, et cetera. Just a great thing. If you want to take a look at one, go to your nearest Guitar Center. I guess in New Orleans, they've got one. Check it out. You can probably play it and see if you like it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jacques, considering you're from New Orleans has a long history of great, professional working musicians. And best might be too big. What you probably want, I'm guessing, is something that's going to sound great. It's going to make you, be able to express yourself well, but easy to pack in and out of all the various clubs and venues that you're probably playing in, hopefully playing in. My favorite as an audio engineer are the amp simulators. And unfortunately, I don't have a name for you, but what I would look into is the category of the amp simulators, where you're going to plug your guitar or bass into a box that then has direct outs for the house, but it'll also have the ability, and by plugging it into the house, they can fold it back to you. Now, what you might want to do is set up some sort of touring in-ear thing where, regardless of what size or which venue you're at, you and your band, you already have your monitor mix dialed in, which you can do in your rehearsal studio. Okay, so you get that all set up, and then you just have direct outs that you feed to the house. But I really like the amp simulators because you can get all kinds of great sounds from them, but you don't have to carry around big, giant, cabinets and stuff like that. And if you do this professionally, and you're not at the level where you can afford cartage and you can afford, guitar techs and stuff like that, you're going to have to carry it yourself, and less is more.
Next question.
From Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. California Forever, the company backed by tech billionaires that wants to build a city in the Bay Area's Solano County, unveiled a website explaining the plans. Compare to Neom in Saudi Arabia, and there's a CaliforniaForever.com link.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, Neom, wasn't that long,
it's the line.
Long strip? Well, this is something else. This is not linear. It's more like Epcot, an experimental prototype city of tomorrow with everything underground. And who knows if this is ever going to come to fruition. They see it as this kind of magical place in California with grapes on the vine and free-flowing wine.
It's a geeky city for rich geeks. It's rich. Yeah, it's for rich geeks. So they have it all, and it'll look idyllic on the top and have all the tech underneath. But it's not really efficient, and it's not something that you could extend. They're not trying to change the world. They're just trying to find a better place for them to live outside of Silicon Valley. That's my opinion. Like, I looked at it, I was like, well, this isn't very efficient. So anyway, it's not short. It might be a nice place to stay. I bet you everything will be $1 million above. Next question.
From Hajmuk Gajar, Cape Town, South Africa. Quiet theater calamity with iPhone. When I join office hours on my iPhone, I remain muted. As soon as I join QMT breakout room, I am unmuted. This can be soul destroying. Zoom iPhone settings is set to mic to mute. Ideas?
I don't know what we have our settings set to. I think that we should make sure that our settings are set to mute on entry, and that might be a setting on our side to do that as well. But it's also why I oftentimes have hardware mute things set up, so that I'm not that I can't. The reason I like hardware mutes, both on my camera, it's why I have a switcher, and this, not the only reason, is that when I leave office hours, I do this. So now I'm. Oh, no. And that's a mute on my hardware audio and my hardware video. Yeah, except when I hit it twice hard. But I don't want that closes things off. Like, it's not going to now go out somewhere. And I'd highly recommend thinking about that I don't join the thing with the phone very often, but I think on our end, we have to set something for that. So we'll look at that. I believe that I believe to your point, Hosmuk, that everyone should always have power to decide whether their phone is closed or not, and they don't. Like, to your problem, what I really hate is if someone has a meeting, I will always call in if I have someone who calls me into a meeting and I go in on Zoom and it automatically opens my camera. I've decided that vendor will always have me dial in. like I will dial in as a phone number because it's not, I don't feel like I'm safe. Like, I want to be able to turn on my phone. I never want it to turn on my camera without me asking. And people have that set in their settings, and it should never do that. It should always be off on entry. It should never be on entry. So it might be something that we're doing. So we'll take a look at it. But everything should always be off on entry. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because there is a setting, because mute mic on entry, but maybe he says it's muted when he enters enters the room, but when he goes to a breakout room, it unmutes automatically.
Maybe taking our. I mean, we'll have to take a look at an ours, because I haven't really looked at it for those. I know that for the stuff I build, it's always off on entry. It's a setting inside the meeting, and it may be overriding it somewhere. That it's probably a bug, so we'll report that as well. Next question
from John Fisher, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What's a good sub $50 lightweight pair of headphones with 3.5 millimeter for quick calls when I don't want to fuss with my Shure SE215 Pro earphones?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
John, I'm using the 215. I have them stuck in my skull right here. They're like bolts inside my head. I didn't use them when I was in radio. When I was in radio, I used a pair of headphones. These are the headphones of choice. You can probably see them on Chris Fenwick's head. The 7506 Sony's, well, I'll do it there so you can see it better. On sale, you could probably get them around $55, typically $75. These are quicker on the head. These are better appearance-wise, so you don't have to see headphones on my head.
Yeah, I really like the Linsol. I think they're the KZ10s, and you can get those with and without the phone, without the microphone. I will say that when you go down in lower price, including the Shures, they're not very good microphones. So they don't. So if you want to sound good on a call, if you just want to listen to a call or listen to stuff, then it's fine. If you want to actually sound good, then the lowest quality one that I use is the Open Comms with a boom. And the reason I use that one is specifically because I sound more clear to people who are doing it, and it gets rid of a lot more of the background noise. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Mitch is right. The reason I wear the headphones is because I am often called away to do something, and I just have to take them off real quick. Mitch, I'm a little disappointed. I really took you for a V6 guy, not the 7560s.
The 7506s, Chris, make me sound good to myself. So,
the V6 is
they may
the
have
original,
a great EQ. They just make me sound good.
This is the original. This is the one that Sony made, and then Sony discontinued, and pro audio people around the globe fought for it, and they brought it back for like another decade. What you have is just it's a cheap knockoff.
Yeah.
Next question.
From Jenny Beauchambeau, Natchitoches, Louisiana. I have to broadcast surgical procedures for a big conference. How do I get gear that is compliant with the medical regulations, exposure, and use in an OR? Is there any AV and streaming gear that is already medically compliant, where do I find it?
Well, so the first thing is that we move all the gear out of the actual room, and usually these rooms are kind of built for it, so they'll have cameras. You're really trying to feed into the cameras that they have. I mean, some of them are stuff that they use inside of surgery, and some of them are high and wides, and a lot of those are already built in. So you're really asking for that interface. If you actually have to put your own in, then we have some members that deal with this, and so I'll reach out to them and see if we can't get more information about how they do that. But to my knowledge, they're using PTZs. I think it's, but I don't think, they're not, they have a pretty wide variety that they can use. I believe their last discussion I had with them is they were using FR7s. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I did some of this about 35 years ago, and I was horribly ill-equipped for working in OR video stuff because of the blood. And I remember the first time blood came out, I had to reach up and turn down the chroma on all the CRTs in front of me. And the director looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Do you want me to be upright or do you want me to pass out? Because I'm done if I have to look at all that red."
You obviously didn't grow up on a farm.
Oh my goodness.
Blood everywhere all the time.
No, I'm not kidding. It was so bad. And, but it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of regulations. Back then, we just had guys with, Sony cameras in the OR.
My intro to being my first day on the farm when I was working at my grandfather's farm. My home farm was nothing, but there was a cow that had a cyst that was this big on the side. We had to pop it, and it was just like all kinds of stuff came out of it. And I was like, okay, well, here's the farm.
The worst part about it, Alex, is this wasn't even real surgery. It was catheters, like through the groin. Yeah. And the guy did the first incision, and it was like drip, drip, and I was done. I was like cold sweat, like I was a wheezy. I literally had to turn down all the chroma, and I was like, either I'm upright or you're cutting this thing yourself.
Yeah,
because I'm about to check out here.
My mother didn't. I won't tell. If you ask me on Sunday, I'll tell you something. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
The other thing I'd like to remind them is that you also want to look at your platform and make sure your platform is compliant.
Yeah,
Zoom does. I know that's why a lot of universities and schools use Teams over Zoom, but Zoom does have education and medical compliant. And then there's platforms like Doxy.me for two-way and things of that nature.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, how well does NDI KVM work in comparison to other remote control solutions like Parsec and NoMachine NX? What are the advantages of NDI KVM?
I don't know. I haven't used it. I don't think anyone here has that. We had a great team yesterday. We'll hopefully bring them back, talk more about NDI. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas writes, iPhone 15 lineup predictions. Do you agree with MacRumors? Launch September 12th, which has been announced. iPhone 15, $749, the Plus, $849, the Pro, $1099, Pro Max, $1299.
Go ahead, Chris.
All we know for certain, and you can read all the rumor sites, but all we know for certain about what the next iPhone will be is that it will be the best iPhone ever.
Well, I'm just waiting for some year where they say, it was a hard year and we couldn't make it better, so we're going to make it a little less, but we'll cut a little. Actually, we're going to charge a little more.
We tried, but this was the best we could come up with.
This is the best we could do.
It's okay.
It's not as good. We had to get rid of some of the components. We got some problems in China.
If you have a 13, you'll be fine. You don't need the 15.
Every time they say it's the best ever, like if it wasn't, why? Why would you do that? Like, why would you, why are we even here? So it's just a funny, it's
I will
funny
say this,
term.
Apple's pretty good about keeping the new prices the same as the old prices.
Yeah.
I think there was some rumor about it might go up because, buttons are more expensive. Who knows? It doesn't matter. It's going to happen in a couple of weeks. Watch. You'll learn with the rest of us.
Next question.
Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas is back. Can Mike Mitchell explain why he wants to imagine his voice dipped in butter with an SM7 and a Chameleon SMooth? Where do you even get an SM7 these days? Did MH mean SM7B?
Real quick, Mitchell. I don't.
Quick background. It's a dedicated device at Angry Audio makes called Smooth that is tweaked to work well with the SM7 series of Shure microphones. And I also have one for Electro Voice RE20s, 20 series. So I do like my voice dipped in butter. Thank you.
So anyway, so we're the reason we're going to go ahead and we are out of questions for today, and Saturdays this is Labor Day Saturday, so I kind of set everybody up for that. So we have a nice perfect hour here right now, and so I'm going to let everyone go and enjoy their Saturday and have it be there. But I think that I want to thank everybody here, thank the incredible team here. We got through a lot of questions. It just wasn't we weren't rushing through them. We weren't slow through them. We were just answering the questions as needed, and we did get through a fair number of them. And so I just want to thank everybody on air. I want to thank all the incredible folks even on this weekend. Peter's here cutting away shows, and Alan is managing the questions, and Gordon is looking at what didn't work, and I want to thank Robert. It's great to have you here. So it's good to have you jumping on, and thank you to the entire panel. We can't do this without you. And thanks to the management team, the development team, everyone there, and thanks to the producers for all the great questions. I think that it's going to be a good Saturday. We had such a great week. I think also I'm ready to take a rest. It was a good week. I especially want to thank Josh. Josh Kaufman. I don't think anyone knows how much work it took for him to have last week go so well. I think he's really low key. He doesn't talk about it, but that's an immense amount of work. Like, it was an immense amount of work that was way over what everyone else is used to doing, for this. And he really did just such a great job. It's probably last week, I thought, was one of our peak office hour weeks. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But it doesn't get done without folks like Josh, and it doesn't get done without everyone who's working on the management, the council. The councils are making this whole thing so much better. We're having these discussions. All of these subjects are going to keep on. I mean, I think that I look at last week as one of the most successful weeks we've had, as far as all 5 days together. And I think that in 3 months, they're all like that, like that. And that's what can happen. Because we're all doing this together. So between the producers asking questions and the panelists showing up and being part of this conversation, and the incredible management and development teams, we get to create content where we get to learn a lot. I mean, I learned a lot in 1 week, from all of these experts, and we don't get to do that by ourselves. We get to do that because we're all willing to do some of this stuff, together. And it was just an incredible lift by everyone. I just wanted to call out Josh because I don't think we mention him by name very often, but he's, a sinew that holds a lot of this stuff together, and we really appreciate his effort. So I think that, it's going to be, I think I was really excited about what we did last week. And I think everyone did a really, really good job. And again, I'm having fun meeting with the councils and figuring out what we're doing next. And if you're interested in all of those things, definitely jump in. Remember that in 2 weeks, IBC will be covered. They're going to take over after hours, before office hours on the 15th. And then they're going to be taking over office hours on the 16th on a Saturday. It's 2 weeks from today. So stay tuned for that. NAB is going to be a big deal. So if you want to be on the panel, this is a month afterwards. If you want to be on the panel, if you want to be on site, if you want to work on it remotely, I would highly recommend looking for the sign up page. It looks like we're going to get space there. So it's going to be that we're kind of both IBC and I think NAB is going to be a step forward to what we've been working on. So it's all going in the right direction. All right, everyone. I don't know how far we travel. I bet you we didn't travel very far today. 60,000 miles, 96,000 kilometers, 475 million bananas for scale. All right. Have a good weekend, or I'll see you tomorrow. So, I could say weekend like we're going to take the time off, but we're not. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's jump into after hours.
Rumor has it they may change NAB to National Association of Webcasters.
Of webcasters?
Yeah.
What was it?
Never
No.
Broadcasters will not allow it.
No. That'd be great. No.
Great job, Alex.
That's good.
Great job. This is kind of nice. Just kind of a low key.
Yeah, I think I like the pressure when I like that there's no pressure on this one to get to the second hour to do the second thing or whatever. It's just like, and it's the weekends are going like that. So.
Yeah, I was watching and I'm like, he's either going to hand it to me or he's not, and it's like,
we were so close. There was one more question, and I was just kind of like, oh, it's just we're in a nice place. Let's just.
And then I got dipped in butter.
Yeah,
the dipped in butter thing. I was like,
but to admit, Cardinal with Laborious now.
There was serious